I welcome to the Real Man Podcast. This is your host, Coach Bricks, and I am back. And I'm honored to have this gentleman on. Um, this guy and I go back probably about 2-3 years now. He's been one of my clients, comes in, works out, and we've had many, many conversations on the topics that we're going to discuss today in the gym. And, he's been there, he's done that, he's coached for years at all different levels, from the youth level to the high school to the collegiate level, been an assistant coach, a varsity coach. He's also been an esteemed police officer down in Houston, Texas, as well as up here with the Pennsylvania State Police. I mean, this guy's seen a lot of stuff in his day, and he definitely has a lot of knowledge to bring to this conversation when we're talking about being real men, leadership, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very excited to have him on. And I call him Coach Rudy, so that's what I'm going to go with because I have mad respect for this guy. He's definitely a gentleman that I look up to highly. I look up to his wisdom and his knowledge that he brings every day to me, and really instills a good sense of family and being a real man. So without me going on anymore, because I know he's definitely going to give you all kind of good stuff here. Coach Rudy, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Coach Bricks. Appreciate that intro.
Nah, man, I truly mean every second of that. Like I said, I've learned so much from you just in this short amount of time that, we've known each other, you coming into the gym and doing this stuff and hearing the stories. And, I take all that stuff and I value your knowledge. And I think that's one thing that, and we'll get into a little bit here in a second, but I think it's one thing that the youth don't always value today. They don't value the knowledge that some of the more experienced persons like yourself have. We just kind of brush it off and think, well, he doesn't know anything. He's an old guy, and I'm getting to that point now, where they think, oh, he doesn't know anything. Yeah, trust me. I used to probably think the same thing about my father, but I look back on it and I say this wholeheartedly, not just because he's my dad. He's probably the smartest man that I've ever met. I mean, the knowledge that he gave me and the knowledge that he knows is unreal. And your sons say the same exact thing about you, So I'm hoping this people who are young, who are immature, maybe to some extent, being a man, really take a lot of what you're going to say here in wholeheartedly and really run with it. Then, really ponder it and then run. So I'm looking forward to this. I want to get right into it, Coach. So here's my first question for you. What do you define as a leader or leadership? What do you define as somebody being a great leader or somebody who has great leadership there?
Yeah, I think that when you talk leadership, I've been really fortunate to have some great mentors in the state police, Colonel Jeff Miller, Colonel Glenn Walp. And I think they've taught me some things. And as a director, and when I retired from the state police, I was director of training and curriculum development, and we administered 21 police academies around the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and had about 1,200 instructors out there working for us. And I know I learned a lesson early on. When I first was promoted, I had a friend I had worked with when I was working special investigations. And he said, when you get out there, you get this new position, don't forget your instructors out there in the field. And I think, getting their feedback and giving them feedback as well on their performance. They wanted to see you out there. You put a face with a name. So I think you have to lead from the front. I've always tried, as a coach to lead by example. I've tried to be, I think my approach is more being a servant leader. And I think, giving credit to others. I think when, you're working as a team, not just, the director or, taking credit for it all. It's just giving credit to the people for the job that they did and taking care of your people. I know I always tell my college players, I've got 28 more daughters here, and on the youth side, I've got 17 more daughters. You just try to, take care of your team and be there when they need you. I've also looked at a couple. I've had the pleasure of meeting General Colin Powell, and I really had a chance to, listen to him speak and meet with him briefly and get a picture with him and that. But he had 18 leadership lessons, and I thought it might be instructive to talk about a couple, especially the time that that we're going through right now. But he was saying, like, never neglect details, picking the right people. I worked for a chief down in Houston who said, I always surround myself with all-stars. and let them do their job. I think having the right people on your team is important, but I thought this lesson number 3 in his list of 18 lessons was don't be buffaloed by experts or elites. Experts possess more data than judgment. Elites can become so inbred that they produce hemophiliacs who bleed to death as soon as they are nicked in the real world. And I think the point is, there is like not being like sitting in your ivory tower. Like it would be easy for me to, like when I was on the job, like sit in Hershey, at my desk, and but I think we tried to be out in the field, being out there. Like it's important, I think, to hear what's really going on the street, what's really going on out in the field. Another thing that I really wanted to mention as far as leadership was Major Dick Winters. I really, famous for the Band of Brothers and taking care of his Rangers in World War II. And one of the things he said, he has like 10 leadership points here for success for leaders, and it's called Leadership at the Point of the Bayonet in his book. And one of the things he talks about is strive to be a leader of character, competence, and courage. And the one I'd like is, and actually when I was a guest speaker at the 107th graduation cadet class, he talked about hang tough, never ever give up. I tell my college players that, regardless of the scores. And what I did was I still wear the band. It says hang tough, 107th cadet class, and I gave each cadet one. And just to remind them, like no matter, be resilient no matter what happens out there, never ever give up, never quit. And I thought you'd like this one, Coach, since you've, really helped me as far as the physical fitness, being a good example, like for your players being physically fit, if you're going to tell them about fitness. And one of the things Dick Winters, Major Winters, said was, if you aren't in good physical shape, forget it. You're not going to be a good leader. So I thought that was interesting. He talked about, being in good shape, that stay in top physical shape. Physical stamina is the root of mental toughness. And I thought, you and your listeners would appreciate that. I think the stuff that you do in your gyms and, helping people not only on the fitness side and the strength, conditioning, speed and stuff, but I think the mindset stuff that you do for your athletes, just preaching that mental toughness and never giving up, I think is really important.
I agree, Coach. And I want to go back to one thing you said early on, and I think it's very key. And I think it's very key for a lot of these, being a real man, being a leader. You said it early on. You said you got to lead from the front. And we see nowadays, and I think this gets to my next question, and I'm going to ask you, what you think. But I see a lot of leaders, so-called leaders, if that's where they want to put themselves in that category. I don't put many people in that category. They tell people what to do. They don't do what they say. They tell people what to do. So I call more or less those people, I call dictators, or tyrants, because they're impounding what they want you to do, but they're not going to follow it, or they're not going to lift a hand to help. And I think that was key when you said that. You lead from the front. You're the guy in there. And it always takes me back to the Spartans, and Leonidas. And I was talking to a girl today about it. It was unfortunate because she never heard the story of it, the story of 300. And it's not just about these guys going out and beating up another group of people. It was about him being a leader at that time, but he was right there with him. He didn't send 300 guys out. He sent 299. He sent himself out, knowing that, hey, the chance of us winning maybe are slim to none, but I got to do what I got to do to defend the rest of, the community. And I think that's not seen in today's leaders. The guys who do that, they step up and they are leaders. And I think some of the people that you said, Dick Winters, definitely. I read some of his stuff on, the Band of Brothers, and watched some of the things that were on TV. He was a leader. He was a straight out leader. He did what he said what he's going to do, and he expected the other guys, to do it. So my question to you, Coach, is, in today's world that we're in, in this crazy time, what do you see lacking in leadership? I see that the man not leading from the front, but what do you see, people who think should be leading but aren't, and why?
Well, I think that if one of my philosophy was I'm not going to ask my people to do something that I'm not willing to do. And, that could be like we used to have to proctor certification tests for police officers around the Commonwealth. And so I'm not going to ask somebody to do them all. I'm going to go out and, be out in the field and go out and do that. I'm not going to ask people to do something I'm not willing to do. And I also think that, like if you make a promise to your people, you got to live up to that. I know we had a situation with some of our seniors a couple years ago, and we had promised we were going to get these jackets, and one thing led to another, and long story short, that they were out of stock. The one they wanted was no longer available, and they just kind of excuse after excuse, and so one of the senior captains contacted me, and she's like, "Coach, like, we really want these jackets," and so we didn't have the budget with our college budget, and so I talked it over with my wife, and she's like, "You made a promise to those girls," and so I went and bought the jackets, and then we gave them out at an alumni game, and it just, I think that when you tell people you're going to do something, you got to do it. And like you mentioned there, Coach, about like, if you tell me, I can't see my family at Christmas, and then you jump on a plane and go see your family, like, I don't think that's leadership.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I agree with you. And
I got to set the example.
I didn't know that story about you with the jackets. I mean, I know we talked about a lot of stories that you've had, but that's one I never heard. That's what I mean. That's a leader right there. That's being a leader. Whether, people who are in that situation never really see themselves as a leader. But to me, when I look at that, that's a leader. Like, you took it upon yourself. You promised. Things always are going to happen. I mean, we can make a million excuses of why we don't do something. I mean, kids give me excuses. A lot of them are bogus, but why they don't do something. But at the end of the day, there was a way to get it done. You found the way. You promised it. And sometimes, it hurts your bottom pocket. But at the end of the day, guess what? You're rewarded by what those kids saw. And that enjoyment in life is sometimes more valuable, and most times more valuable than the monetary things that sometimes, we might lose or gain or whatever. And I give you a lot of credit, Coach. So like I said, I don't see a lot of people doing that. They would just been like, hey, I can't do nothing about it. You stepped up to the plate. So you're definitely, like I said, I've always saw you as a leader, and that just reaffirms what you just did. So that's awesome, Coach. Hey, I want to get to this question here, Coach.
Okay.
All right, and this one builds into that leadership role, and I think this is something that men sometimes lack in today, and it's self-discipline. What do you consider self-discipline, and how do you work on it?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think what's helped me on self-discipline just is, being able to work with you and, the morning crew at the gym. I just think that, because when you say, if I tell you I'm going to be there at 8 a.m. and I know you're going to be there, I better be there. I think having the discipline, to get there and be on time. I think what helped me, I was an athlete growing up, and I think, I got kind of thrust into some leadership positions through athletics, but also I'm going back, I was thinking about some of these issues, and I was how talk about being in law enforcement stuff, and early on in sixth grade, I was part of the school safety patrol, crossing the little kids across the street. That responsibility, like, hey, you're supposed to be there, to be able to cross those kids. And then I think in college, I had a work study job that how I really got interested in law enforcement was working for the campus police. And I think, again, being a leader on campus, you've got to set an example. If you're a student officer for the campus police, you better be, set an example for the other students. And I still hear this story with my family. Like, my sister tells me all the time, I always had to take my sister with me on, she was growing up, like I'd pull her in a wagon, and, like my friends were like, oh, you got to bring your sister. But I'm responsible to be, disciplined to be able to watch her as well as, have a good time with, playing with my friends. But, I just think, that we had a situation, again, growing up, my dad was injured really bad in the steel mill. He spent 32 years in a steel mill, and that's one thing. He never really wanted me to go in the mill. That's why he wanted me to get a college education. And but I had a little job at Woolworths, and he was off work, and I had to give that money to my family. I wanted to help my family out, and I think those are the things you do, like that. Having that discipline, and I think you need that as a leader. If you're just kind of set the tone for your people.
No, I agree. And I think, those stories really hit home because I had a paper route when I was 7. I mean, I helped my brothers, did those kind of things. I know what it's like. You got to take your brother or, your sibling, the younger one, with you sometimes because, that's your job and stuff. And and at the time you don't see it, but as you get older, you see, hey, that was part of my responsibility, my discipline. I had to be disciplined to do these things. Papers had to be delivered at a certain time. They didn't be delivered a certain way. They couldn't be wet. So I just couldn't throw them up there and have them blow away or, get wet. So, I mean, definitely, I think self-discipline goes a long way. And when you instill it at a young age, I think it's easier as you grow because you see it. When we try to instill it, and I think that's what's happening now, we take away that discipline, that self-discipline part of it from the kids. We try to do everything for them, not us, but, society does. It's hurting them because as they get older, then they don't know how to really do things on their own. They don't know how to, set, hey, I told you 9 o'clock, but I'm showing up at 9:30. Well, no, I'm here at 9 o'clock. This is what time I expect you. And I see that more and more when I talk to more bosses, more people who run companies. That's what they're seeing a problem in. So I love that story because I think it's definitely in. Now, here's one that's going to hit you a little more personal. Do you have a fear? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I think, fear, I know one of the movie, you made a reference to movie, Gerard Butler, playing Leonidas, but he also played in a movie about the White House being attacked, and he was trying to get the president's son out of the White House to safety. And this little guy says, hey, I'm really scared, and he's like, so am I. Yeah. Here's this bad dude, really tough Secret Service agent. And but I think, going to that, just I have a couple different thoughts about it if we have some time. Is one is what we try to do when we were training police officers, because again, you don't know, you stop a vehicle, you don't know who in the heck you're stopping and walking up to the car, and you can't screw a gun in everybody's ear, you have this little old lady or something that you're stopping. And so I think that we always preached preparation, not paranoia, because I think fear can, and I think we're seeing some of this in this pandemic. You keep, it paralyzes you, and I think it can panic you if, and I think it polarizes people, being afraid of other people or whatever. And so I think that that preparation, so it becomes kind of like conditioned response. I try to talk to my college players, that we put them in scenarios and training practice, that when they see that picture on the field, hopefully they're going to hear my voice or Coach Clay's voice in their head, like, hey, this is what, what we want you to do. And just that, I know even like preparing to go to work as a police officer, my wife would tease me. She's like, oh, you already got your police face on. Like, I think it's a mental prep. I would go, to work, and then, you're in the locker room, you're putting on your body armor, putting on your uniform. I think that mindset, that preparation. But I think, on the flip side, though, I think there's a book out there and I had my daughter read this book, and it's called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. And I think it's that, like the Spider-Man, that the kids like, that spidey sense, you're tingling, the hair's up on the back of your neck. I think that intuition, I think following your feeling, like, hey, like something's telling me, like, not to run around this corner or walk down this alley or in this parking lot by myself. I think that, you gotta like pay attention to those signals. Or if you see a situation, I think, relating it back to soccer, always talk about field awareness. Where's the ball? Where's your opponent? Where's your teammates? I think having that awareness, like, and then when you're, walking out to your car, tell my players this, tell my daughter this, like, be aware of your surroundings, look inside the car, like, have your keys out, like all those things. I think that where, trust your instincts on that, the fight or flight, I think we have that for a reason. But I think, yeah, there've been times on incidents that, yeah, I think being afraid, I don't want, I think it's kind of more like cautious, like you just can't, of course we're running to this, police officers are running to the sound of the gunfire, but I think, doing that in a cautious way too, an officer safe, because if, like we always say, like if you get hurt going to the scene, you can't get to the scene to help the people that need help. So I think, doing it in a responsible way, safe way, but obviously you're putting, the men and women out there now. I mean, I've been out of it about 5 years now, and I think they're putting their life on the line every time they go out there, and I think just having that the preparation, and I think just trusting your instincts when you're doing those dangerous tasks out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you put it out, like, you even being a cop, you still had fear. I think some people think that, oh, being a man, you're not supposed to have this fear, but I think that's wrong. You know what I mean? We all have, in my honest opinion, I think we all have fear. Can't, say for everybody, but, it doesn't matter. It's like you said, be cautious about it, but then also there's going to be times that you're going to have to overcome it. You're going to have to work through that, and that's what I think it takes sometimes to be a man. Admit that you have this thing, but then how do you work through it? And then also be cautious, because I tell my daughters the same thing. I tell my wife, same things you were just saying. You got to be ready when you're out. If I'm not there, you got to be ready, because you never know. There's some crazy people in the world that come up behind you or do whatever, and you just got to always be prepared. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's great for anybody, but especially for males, as you have daughters, if you have daughters or you have sisters or you have, your mom, you got to let them know. You got to, prepare them for those kind of things. So
I think you can be paralyzed by fear too. And I think, that's what I meant about that conditioned response. Like, you see something, you're able to, because you've rehearsed it in your mind, like, even driving, again, telling my kids and telling my players this, I mean, I do it, like, what if somebody pulls out in front of me? What if a kid chases a ball out in the street? What if, I think, as a police officer, I'm thinking, like, what if there's an alarm at this bank? So I think of those hypotheticals and having it in your mind already, like, okay, I think, because sometime in, say, vehicle situations, like, I think people's first instinct a lot of times is slam the brake on. Well, that may not be the best thing. It may be steer around the obstacle, I think so. Having those things in mind, like, okay, we always talk about coming up to an intersection. I still do it. Like, I cover the brake, even though I have a green light, because I've seen people run red lights in a little town, that has like 2 traffic lights, so it's not always just, it's going to happen, in a city.
Yes.
So,
no, I agree.
So I think that, not being paralyzed by fear, but, having a plan, I think, to overcome it. And, I think I'm trying to think what general said, like, we're not retreating, but, like we talk about, sometimes you have to tactically retreat, to cover or whatever. But he said, we're just advancing to the rear, right? We're not retreating. I forget what general said that.
Yeah. But you're right. I think having a good plan to overcome that is definitely key. All right, Coach. So here's one. It's been a big topic that's actually been popped up probably over the last couple of years, and it's only gotten, in my opinion, worse. But it's one of these things called toxic masculinity. Do you think that exists in today's society, or is that just something that society continues to pound on to try to push an agenda a certain way?
I think, we've talked about this at the gym. I think, I've talked about it, with my family, and, I just think that, you kind of getting barraged as a male. I know, and talking to my sons about like being a real man, and one of the things like they told me like what helped them like that I growing up was that they saw how I treated my wife, how I treated my daughter, how I treated my mother or my mother-in-law. Like it's not a bad thing to open car doors and be a gentleman and being a modern day knight, as I call it. Like they were saying, even one of my sons just said, like like chivalry is not a bad thing. That's not a weakness.
Yeah.
And I think sometime like you know uh, to be a man, there's you're just like there's just certain things that you're different. Men are different than women. I mean, it just that's biology, that's nature. Like, so I think sometime there, it's not that they're the woman being weak by you protecting her or by you opening a door and all. I think just being a gentleman and how you treat people. When I was always brought up, I know my dad always taught me about respect, and there was no way like talking back to my mother and stuff. It's just respect for other people, and so I think it's important to be that guardian. That's you meant again going back to Leonidas, protecting the whole country, protecting his family. Like I think that being that guardian, like that, because I know we had this discussion. I don't know if it's applicable at this point, but maybe later. But there's this big discussion about being a warrior, or like being like a guardian. And the differences. And I know there was a big discussion about that in law enforcement. And but I know another, again, going back to a military one, but Colonel Dave Grossman does a lot of training and stuff. And, saying like, there's wolves out there, you got to be a sheepdog to protect the sheep. You know what I mean? So I don't think, being masculine and being, to protect, being a protector, I think in society, that's important role. Like, so I don't know if that answers the question, but
No, it does.
Yeah, I think it's out there. I think you're just kind of barraged with this, and I think, we've got to be able to teach young men that it's okay to be men.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, disrespecting people or, it just means, I think that being that modern day knight.
Yes. No, I agree, Coach. You and I are on the same page with that. I 100% agree. So here's another one for you. What is, and this goes into the psyche of, real man. And I think it can be used by females as well. And I think it sometimes lacks in society. And that is, what is mental toughness? Because I think it's always a word that gets thrown around, but I don't think it always gets explained correctly. But what does mental toughness mean to you?
Well, I think it goes back to that, like the never giving up, being able to, you're down, as a sports reference, you're down in the score and, not giving up. And I think that, being resilient, like bad things are going to happen, and how do you react to them? Things in a game, like we may give up an own goal. How do we come back from that? And I think, again, goes back to like leadership styles. I know Julie Foudy from the U.S. Women's National Team, and she's a ESPN commentator now, but had an opportunity, a couple of times to talk to Julie. And she has this leadership program, but she talked about different leadership styles. And like Mia Hamm was very quiet, but the situation, they needed a goal. She's like, just give me the ball. I'll get us a goal. They teased her and they called her Loudy Foudy because like a lot of times she was kind of like, all right, let's pick it up. Like You needed to be that kind of leader that have that toughness. There's also, she mentioned like Carla Overbeck, she would bring everybody in, together and say, hey, look, we got this. and it happened in a situation, I don't recall the exact game, but I think Brandy Chastain gave up an own goal, and Carla Overbeck goes to her like, look, you're going to end up winning this game for us. Like, stay in the game. Don't get down about it. Just so there's different leadership styles that leads into that mental toughness. I think the mental prep for that too, like, because it is that, like you said, it's a term a lot of people talk about, but I think just developing that mindset and, being, all like I think putting people in scenarios where they've got to deal with something like, and I've had this happen where you're talking to them about being under control emotionally, and like in training, I'll make every call go against one team, and I'll get this. That's not fair. That's not, it's like, hey, look, you got to deal with the call. We can't control, and I think that's another one. I think that's a Mike Tomlin one where control the controllables or control what you can control. And so I just say, like, we're putting him in a situation, okay, like, you're down a goal, you got 2 minutes, let's play. Or this team's up a goal, how are you going to deal with it? Are we going to be able to, basically, deal with a 1-goal lead, and how do we keep that, and basically, ending the game, so, so I think putting people in those situations helps develop that mental toughness.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I remember watching, going right to that point, watching the Last Dance with Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, all that kind of stuff, and he talks about how Phil Jackson, he was on a team, they were separated, and they were playing, and his team was up like 9-0, and the game was like 11. I forget the exact, thing, and then Phil Jackson decides to throw him on the other team, the team that had 0 points.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Michael turns it around, and guess what? They end up winning the game. Michael's team comes back and scores whatever, the next 11 points or whatever it is. I forget what they're playing to, but does that. And he wanted to see where he was at. How much is he going to cry? How much is he going to complain? Like, you're taking me off this team that's winning and putting me on this team that's getting destroyed. And I think he wanted to challenge him to be like, listen, you're going to have situations in life that's going to be difficult. How do you overcome that? Like you said, not everything's always going to go your way. You're going to get bad calls. Are you going to argue and complain and then get mentally out of it? Or are you going to be able to stay in there and focus on that and recover and get back? And you nailed it right. And I think, doing situational things in life help later on in life. You don't think they were going to work, because you're like, oh, why would I do this? They're wasting my time. Mm-hmm. But it's always going to come in a point in your life that you're going to need something like that. And it always comes up good. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah. I think another thing too, we talk a lot about, like, how do you deal with, again, I think this goes to mental toughness too, is like when you make a mistake. And, again, this is something that, Julie Foudy told me about. They do a thing where, oh, darn, like, what do you say when I make a mistake? We say fudge. I'm sure they're saying maybe something else. but okay, now I made a mistake. How do I fix it? I just shot striker and I just shot it over the frame. Again, that's technique. How do I fix it? Oh, I might gotta get my head down, knee over the ball, body over the ball, follow through, and then focus. Like, what's the next play? Oh, it's a goal kick. So now I got to get focused. That plays over. Like, even with goalkeepers, and you're a former keeper, yeah, like, you give up a goal, and I know you didn't give up too many, but when you give up a goal, how do you deal with it, right? Like, yeah. That plays over, trying to say, hey, that shot's over. Like, you got to worry about the next shot. And I think, so we do that, fudge, fix, focus, as a way of helping, players deal with mistakes. And, I think I coach younger players too. And I think sometimes they think they're going to get yelled at, for making a mistake. And it's like, look, we're not going to yell at you. We want you to learn. I think sometimes, and this goes back to maybe, losing a match, you might learn more than winning one, or you make a mistake, that's how you learn.
Yep. I agree. I 100%. I think they're valid and excellent points, Coach. Excellent. This goes back, it's going to be a little more personal one with you again, but what's your biggest failure, or maybe one of your biggest, things that your learning experience that you've ever had in your life?
Yeah, I think, this is one of those in like the job interview, like you're asking me a tough one, like, like, what are your weaknesses, or
Yeah.
what are your
Yeah.
failures? I think we'd all like to talk about our successes,
Yeah.
but like I said, I think sometimes you learn more um, by failing and getting back up. And this again just goes back to that mental toughness. I think this theme that you've got for this conversation, and I think how do you bounce back from a failure, whether you're failing a test. Um, One of the things that just on the personal side is, the kind of, and I take it as a failure. We were pilot testing a new curriculum, and we were adding hours, and was 12, 14, 16-hour days. A lot of people putting time to do this curriculum, and but I was also faced with, at the time, the state was dealing with retirement system changes, and I had to look at protecting my retirement and protecting my family, because they were talking about making some drastic changes, and it was a big decision. And so I had to leave before that project was over. And not that my people couldn't handle it, but ended up they went in another direction. And like a lot of that work was just, it turned out to be like a waste. And I look at that, it's kind of like, that was kind of my baby to like shepherd that through and get it implemented, and wasn't there to do it. I thought that, there was some discussion about bringing me back like as an annuitant, that I could keep working on it. And well, that didn't happen with state budget and all this stuff. So, and then they went in another direction, and I thought was a step backwards. And, I, I felt that, that I failed on that, not getting that implemented for future police recruits and cadets, and, for police officers out there turning out high quality people, but I thought that curriculum gave us a chance to really like be one of the leaders in the country with police training, and then we kind of backed off of that, from what I understand. And I just felt bad I couldn't get that mission accomplished. So I'm not sure it was it wasn't a complete failure, but I think a lot of good things happened during that process. But we didn't. The bottom line is we didn't get the job done, and I feel bad like that. I didn't get that finished.
Gotcha. Now let's reverse that. What is one of your biggest growths, or maybe a situation that happened in your life? What's one of the biggest things that happened maybe in your life that you really grew from? You're like, wow, this really was a positive instead of the negative with the failure part. Let's go to the positive aspect.
Yeah, I think looking at that a couple different ways. I think looking at it as a father, looking at it career wise, and I think as a coach, I kind of looking at that. I think from when our first son was born till then, when our third child, I think I'm hoping I improved as a dad and learned,
Yeah.
through those lessons. Career wise, I felt was on a pretty good trajectory for growth. I went from being an officer on the street to being a field training officer, to being a trainer for the police department, then coming back to Pennsylvania, then ended up getting a position where I was training instructors, which is a higher level, train the trainer, and then ultimately being a director of training and curriculum development. And as I mentioned, being able to administer those police academies and those instructors, plus my own people. And so I think that I really grew from being out there to, now I did have a background in education. My undergraduate degree is in secondary education. And for a time there, I thought I was going to be a history teacher and, and a coach. But I, went another direction into law enforcement and had a great 35-year career. But speaking of coaching, I think, based on our discussion, you'd probably, and I think some of the athletes you train would probably call me old school. But I think, that having to grow from that, because the coaches that I had were more like the drill instructor, like just do it because I told you. Like, why? Because I told you to.
Yep.
And I think now, like, being more player centered with kind of guided discovery, like especially with the younger players, I try to ask a lot of questions. And even with my college players, got this from Anson Dorrance, one of the best women's soccer coaches with all the championships he's won at University of North Carolina. But he would always, he had asked questions of practice. Future soccer coaches of America, how would you deal with this situation?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like trying to, for me to be able to grow, putting them in positions where they have to solve problems, and because they have to do it on the field, and can't just always tell as much as you'd like to. I think, we see some of those coaches, like in soccer, you can't call a timeout, as you know, but I see some of the yelling, especially younger kids, people yelling, and I just think, like being able to do that in training, do the teaching. That's what I think I like most about soccer at coaching, and do the teaching and then let them see how that transfers from the practice field to the match. I think it's really important for me. And I know you do this too, is like, I look at it as I've grown to, like, I think I'm in it for the right reason. Like, I'm here to give back to the next generation. I think that's what this is all about. I think, whether it's being a father, whether it's being a coach, whether real men, just giving back, helping the next generation, to grow and learn. So I think I've grown really in those three areas, as a father in my career and as a coach.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right. Last question, Coach. I want 3 characteristics that you feel, your top 3. It could be more, but just your top 3 that make up a real man.
Okay. I think there's a lot of things that go into those characteristics of real men. I think I'm going to bring it back to, we've been talking leadership pretty much the whole conversation. I think you got to be a leader, first of all. One, I was lucky, with the state police, like they wanted you to be involved in the community. So being a leader in your community, like being a coach, like I was luckily had bosses that would give me time to leave work early to like when I was coaching high school, to be able to leave. And I just think then at the college level, being able to get there at a certain time. And I was very fortunate that the state police really wanted you to be out there impacting kids. And I think I might have told you this story, but I'll mention it again about I was involved in a situation where the Department of Justice was looking at implementing a consent decree out at Ferguson out in Missouri. And I was one of the teams that got to go out there and spend time in St. Louis and spend time in Ferguson. And I thought one of the questions, of course, they have all the media, TV cameras, everything. You're up on this stage, and people, the community forum, be able to ask any question. You don't know what they're going to ask when they get up to the podium. And one black gentleman came up to the podium, and he just says, "I just have one question. I want to know, is there anybody up on that stage that can talk to kids?" So I think, being able to, and I got into like police athletic leagues and the importance of sports. And so I think it's like being involved in the community, I think is really important if you can. And that could be volunteer firemen, not just necessarily coaching, but that's one of the ways I give back to the community. And then I think, it goes back to ethics, being honest. I think that's really important as a leader. And I think we talked about this earlier, Coach, about follow through on your promises. Do what you say you're going to do. But when you told me about this Real Man project that you're undertaking, which I think you should be really be commended for doing this. I had a chance to talk to my wife about it. Like, what's her perspective on a real man? And her first thing was takes care of his family. And then she said, listens and be romantic. So I think we, can't forget about that stuff.
You're right.
And then treat everybody with respect. I think following the golden rule, and that's how I was brought up, and try to do that. And But I think that, um, you know, in talking to my sons about it, they were home for the holidays. We're glad to have them home for the holidays. And so I asked them, again, as their dad, like, how have I helped you, or, you know, how, to become the men that you are now. And one's 35, one's 30. And I think one of the things they said was they had rules growing up. There was consequences, for breaking those rules, but there was also, like, they said they had these boundaries that they could operate in, but that my wife and I trusted them. So it basically, like, they learned to explore because we trusted them to go out there, explore these things. And they both said it helped them be independent people. Like, having that flexibility to be able to, and again, we said, hey, you can always come home, or if you make a mistake, we'll deal with it, but always don't compound it. And I'm sure your dad said this to you, like, don't compound the situation by lying about it. Like, tell the truth, we'll deal with it, whatever happens. And then they said you taught us how to treat our mom, sister, and grandma, that they treat women the right way based on what they saw. That, again, I think kids, they're watching how you do things. It's not always, again, like, don't do as I say, but do as I do. All those cliches, Dave, that I think that are pertinent. But again, I think I mentioned earlier, they both said that chivalry is not weakness. And It shouldn't be perceived as that. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective, that they had. I wanted to know, like, how, what did I do? Because, like, to help them become the men that they are. And very proud of both of them. I think that, that those, apparently those things, are helpful, like, that we've been talking about this whole discussion, like, being a leader, doing the right thing, being honest, being ethical. There's consequences, try to, again, going back to coaching, there's consequences if you break a team rule. I know Coach Clay's had to deal with some situations, and sometimes it's your best player, and it's like, hey, you're not playing this game, or, you're not going to be on the team anymore for this serious infraction. And, those are tough. Those are the tough decisions, having to, again, comes back to that leadership that we've been talking about.
No, Coach, I think you're exactly right. I think what your wife said was phenomenal. Those 3 points that she pointed out, you know what I mean? I think getting a perspective from a woman, and then also your boys, they're grown up, so they're not like, 8, 9 years old. You're trying to ask them these questions. They haven't gone through the whole process yet. They're grown men, and getting that process and hearing them, what they said. And I think it's key, because I think so much right now in society, females think they can do everything a man can. And I don't think, when I come out with this program, it's not, I understand a female can do these things. This isn't what the whole program is about. It's how we complement each other, and I think that's one of the problems I think going on in society is there's the feminist movement. Why it might have started out as something great, I think it's morphed into something like, well, we're just as good as men, we're if not better. And I don't think that's how we should ever see it in today's society. I don't think the males should think they're more dominant, or the females. I think you have to put them together. And that's why God put us on this earth, is to complement each other. Fill in the holes where one person does extremely well with, or where they're weak at, fill those holes in and work together. And I think that's one of the issues that I see. And I see the males are now taking a back seat and really falling off in what their roles are. And it kind of worries me, because I'm going to eventually die. We're all going to die. I know that's one guarantee in life. But what's going to be left here? I have two young girls, 2 daughters, and I want them to be treated right. And I told them, we were sitting down, like you said, over the Christmas break here, and my niece, who's a little bit older, she's 18, and she said the one guy she went out with just honked a horn. Now, I wasn't there, this is my brother's house, just honked a horn to go out. I'm like, wait a second here. What would have happened back in the day? You know what I mean? Like, bam, a little smacking, by our fathers, if we would have done that, But the second one, went up, knocked on the door, introduced himself, had a little conversation with my, my brother. And then, took her to the car, opened the car door and went in. And I'm like, that's what a man does. It's not, I understand a woman could easily do that. That's not the point here. The point being is that you still show that respect. If the woman doesn't want it, she's like, hey, listen, I can do all this. Okay, fine. That's on you. But at least you show that. And that's what I'm trying to get across with this program. And I appreciate you being on because you give different perspectives. My perspective is going to be a little bit different because I haven't gone through everything yet. My daughters haven't hit that teenage stage, or my kids haven't hit that. You saw that. You worked in law enforcement. You saw a lot of stuff, what it took to be a leader in very difficult situations where it's life or death. You know what I mean? You make the wrong decision, it could be over, and you had to make that decision a lot of times, not just for yourself, but for other people. So I greatly appreciate you being on. This was phenomenal because I've learned some stuff about you that I didn't even know. And we talk a lot. We do talk a lot, Coach, about a lot of, because I love listening to your stories. But there's a couple stories in there I had no clue about. And listening to that, just gives me a whole different perspective on you and how much I respect you and how highly I keep you, in high regards. You know what I mean? I always consider my father my number one father figure. But I'll admit this, man, to you right now. You're definitely right behind. And the stuff that you've taught me over the last year and a half definitely means a lot to me. And I appreciate you being on because, I am trying to grow this program. I want this program to be something special, not just for me. It's not really just about me. It's about what our future holds here in America, and you and I have talked about it. It's falling apart, but there's a way we can fix this. It's not unfixable, but we got to be willing to step up and take charge and stuff like that and teach young men how to be men again. And so I appreciate you, Coach, man. Valuable information here, guys. For anybody who did not get all of it, go back and listen to it again and again and again, because I guarantee I'm going to go back and listen to it and I'm going to catch something else that I totally maybe slipped my mind, or maybe I didn't even pick up on because I was thinking of some of the other stuff. So, Coach, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Well, I'll try to live up to, again, another Mike Tomlinism, but the standard is the standard, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you set a standard there at EXSP, and I just am honored to be part of this process and be on this podcast with you. Appreciate you inviting me. And again, I think if it helps one person out there, I always look at that. Like, if it helps one person, then all the stuff that you're doing and all the people that are helping you, it's worthwhile. So glad to be a part of it, Dave. And again, great job. Some tough questions there. Hopefully these answers, and the stories are going to help some young men out there. And always available too as a coach. So if there's anything I can do to help, I'm willing to do that.
Coach, I appreciate it. Hey, guys, make sure you guys continue to listen into our podcast. Also, be on the lookout. We just finished up having an online seminar, all right, for a lot of guys, local athletes and stuff like that we did. I'll be putting out probably clips of that, but also I'm going to do a round table discussion, all right? There's going to be all different topics that we're going to do. I'm going to hopefully ask Coach Rudy here in the future here to be in one of the round table discussions where we have it online so people can see it and we can actually ask each other as males, what's going on. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm also starting on my program the week of January 18th. You want to get involved, all right? Everything's on my website. It's under The Real Man. It's at the very top under my EXSP website. We'll meet once a week as a group, as young men, we'll meet and go over different scenarios. And I'll give you different work to do. I want you to work on certain things. This isn't just like, all right, you come and listen, that's it. No, I want you to learn and listen and understand and do some work and how we do it. And then we're also going to have some in-house stuff. I know I already asked Coach Rudy to help me out here, different scenarios, how to deal with a bully, how to, change a tire on a car, how to hold a door for a female, how to interact with adults, how to interact with, the elderly. They're not just people that we just push aside and say, well, these people are old and just move on. No, how to do all this stuff. So we're going to be doing some in-house stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to all this stuff. And guys, continue to work hard. Continue. If you have any questions, continue to let me know. I'm more than happy to, answer them. And I know Coach just said it as well. If you have something for him, just let me know. If you don't know how to get in touch with him, I'll get in touch. This guy's an open book. I'm telling you, he and I could sit probably for hours upon hours and discuss things. And I'm mesmerized all the time. So he's an awesome reference that I love having. And I enjoy, being part of the family, of the EXSP family, but now the Real Man family as well. So guys, have yourself a great day. I'm blessed. You be blessed. God bless you and take care.